Objective: first, to identify and explore the common source, causes and transmission pathway of radiation exposure that may occur in various settings within the community, including both natural and man-made sources. This includes understanding how radiation travels and affects the surrounding environment and individuals through different exposure routes. Second, to explain in detail the short-term and long-term health effects of radiation on individuals and large populations, such as biological damage, cancer risk, genetic mutation, and potential impact on future generations. This objective also covers how different levels and types of radiation exposure contribute to health outcomes. And lastly, to analyze and evaluate a real-world case study, specifically the Chernobyl nuclear disaster, in order to understand the impact of large-scale radiation incidents, how they affect human health and the environment, and the critical role of preventive and protective measures in mitigating such risks in the future.
Okay, for the next chapter is definition of radiation. Radiation is the energy emitted in the form of waves or particles that travel through space or a medium. It can be natural, such as sunlight, or radiant gas from the earth, or non-man-made, like X-rays or emission from nuclear power plants. Radiation is classified into two types: ionizing radiation, which has enough energy to remove electrons from atoms and potentially damage living cells and DNA, and non-ionizing radiation, which has lower energy and is generally less harmful. Understanding radiation is important to its wide range or use and potential health effect.
The Chernobyl disaster, one of the most catastrophic nuclear accidents in history, occurred in April 26, 1986 at Reactor 4 of the Chernobyl nuclear power plant in Ukraine, which was then part of Soviet Union. The incident happened during a late-night safety test that went disastrously wrong due to combination of flawed reactor design and human error. As a result, a massive explosion and fire released enormous quantity of radioactive substance into atmosphere. These radioactive particles spread across vast areas of Europe, contaminating land, water, and air, and exposing millions to radiation. It is considered one of the worst nuclear disasters in terms of both cost and casualties. The immediate explosion and the radiation it unleashed affect thousands of plant workers, emergency personnel, and local residents. Many suffer from acute radiation sickness, and the long-term effects include increased rates of cancer, birth defects, and psychological trauma. Additionally, the environmental damage was extensive and persists to this day. Large areas around Chernobyl remain uninhabited, and the region continues to be closely monitored. This disaster prompted widespread concern about nuclear safety and led to significant reform in how nuclear power plants are operated and regulated around the world.
For the next slides focuses on the serious health effect caused by radiation exposure, particularly in large-scale nuclear incidents such as the Chernobyl disaster. Radiation doesn't just affect the environment, it has a deep and long-lasting impact on human health. Let's go through each other of the key effects one by one. First, we have acute radiation sickness, or ARS. This condition primarily affected first responder and plant workers who were exposed to extremely high dose of radiation right after the explosion. The symptoms appear rapidly within hours to days and included severe nausea, vomiting, fatigue, and even death in some cases. These individuals were on the front lines with little to no protection. Next is thyroid cancer, which saw a dramatic increase, especially among children and teenagers. This is because radioactive iodine was released into the environment and easily absorbed by the thyroid gland. Younger individuals are vulnerable because their thyroids are still developing, and exposure at a young age greatly increase the risk of a cancer. Moving on the leukemia and other cancers. Over time, long-term exposure to radiation in affected areas has been linked to a rise various forms of cancer. These include both blood cancer like leukemia and solid tumors in organs such as the lung and breast. These cases often appear years after the initial exposure, highlighting how radiation can silently affect people over the long term. Another major concern is genetic mutation. Exposure of radiation can damage DNA in human cells. This not only affects the individual exposed but raises concern about heritable mutation, meaning these genetic changes can be passed on to future generations, possibly increasing health risks in the offspring of affected individuals. Related to that birth defect, there have been increased report of children born with developmental delays, physical abnormalities, and other health complications among parents who were exposed to radiation. This effect are deeply tragic and represent one of the most heartbreaking consequences of nuclear accident. Last, we must not ignore the mental health problem. Living through a nuclear disaster is incredibly traumatic. Survivors, evacuees, and those living in contaminated zone after suffer from high level of stress, anxiety, depression, and post-traumatic stress disorder. The fear of contamination, loss of homes, and uncertainty about health outcomes causes long-term psychological damage to individuals and entire community. In summary, radiation exposure doesn't just harm people physically, it also leaves emotional and psychological scars that can last for decades or over generations.
Problem statement. First, the Chernobyl disaster revealed serious flaws in the design and operation of the RBMK nuclear reactor, combined with a lack of proper safety protocols and staff training. These issues lead to a dangerous and preventable explosion, highlighting the risk of poorly managed nuclear technology. Second, the delayed response and lack of transparency by Soviet authorities significantly increased the health risk for nearby residents and emergency workers. Many were not informed about the radiation dangers in time, leading to unnecessary exposure and long-term health consequences such as cancer and radiation sickness. And lastly, the widespread radioactive contamination caused severe environmental and public health problems that continue to affect the region decades later. The disaster displaced entire communities, harmed ecosystems, and created ongoing challenges in healthcare, environmental recovery, and radiation monitoring.
And now I want to talk about solutions. For the solution, we got three, which is the one is strengthen nuclear safety standards and training. That is, ensure that all nuclear facilities follow strict international safety guidelines. Operator and staff must receive regular, updated training in emergency response and reactor management to prevent technical and human errors. For the second one is improve transparency and emergency communication. Governments and nuclear agencies must provide clear, timely information to the public and international bodies. During nuclear emergency, early warning and public evacuation plans can save lives and reduce exposure. And the last one is invest in long-term environmental and health monitoring. Continuous monitoring of radiation levels, health screening for affected population, and environmental rehabilitation programs are essential to manage the long-term effect of radiation exposure and restore public trust.
The conclusion, the Chernobyl disaster served as a powerful reminder of the dangers of nuclear energy when safety protocols, communication and preparedness are neglected. The explosion not only caused immediate loss of life but also led to a long-time health problem, environmental damage and psychological effects that are still being felt today. It revealed serious weakness in nuclear safety system and highlight the importance of proper risk management. By learning from this tragedy, we can improve nuclear safety practice, strengthen emergency preparedness and build public trust through education and transparency. Continue internationally, cooperation is essential to ensure safer nuclear operation and to prevent such disaster from ever happening again.